Hey everybody, welcome back to Swedenborgian Life Live. Today we're going to be looking at the will, the understanding, and how to get into heaven. In case you ever wondered that kind of stuff, my name is Curtis Childs, and I'll be your host, and this is Swedenborg Scholar Extraordinaire, Dr. Jonathan Rose. Did I say extraordinaire last time?
No, I don't think so.
I hope not, because that's like a lame thing to say twice. Thanks, Jonathan, for hanging out with us, and thanks to all of you for being a part of this program. This is where we try to give you a basic understanding of the Swedenborg world so you can get in there and hopefully get some good life change out of it. We got a lot of activities today we're going to go through with you, and we've contents tabled them right here. First, we're going to have our icebreaker, where we'll be answering a question and you'll be answering a question so we all get to know each other. Then we'll go to our weekly Swedenborg keywords, where we give you the building blocks by which to get a spiritual view of the world. Together, we'll go on a road trip in the afterlife. We'll have a chat Q&A. So when we hit that point, you can be asking live questions. Do so, and we will try our best to humiliate ourselves trying to answer them. Then we're going to meet one of you from the audience during our guest story part. We've got an interview that we taped with somebody who's been into the show. We want to hear what it's all about. And then we'll hear your response to this icebreaker question. In the beginning, it's going to be a great ride. Thanks to all of you for going on it with us. So let's start right so that it gets less awkward than it is right now. Let's do our icebreaker.
All right.
Question. So this is a question we're going to answer, and all of you answer it in the chat, and then we'll compile your answers, and by the end, we'll have answered all the answers. I just want to say answers 5 times in a sentence. Okay, here's the question as it stands.
Okay.
Which book of Swedenborg's did you first have exposure to? Now, this is going to be a difficult question for you, because unless I'm mistaken, you never not been around Swedenborg's books.
That's true.
Which is kind of similar for me, because we were raised Swedenborgian, as they say.
Yeah,
but
that's
still,
right.
Everyone at home start answering it. But I want to hear, maybe this is the first book you really remember interacting with, or how do you want to spin that question so you give the people at home something
Yeah, there was something that I saw in Heaven and Hell that so changed my perception in an interesting way. I'd always had this kind of nagging thought in my head that mathematically we round down. Like, what are you, 0.0000001% of the human race or something like that?
Yeah.
Mathematically, you round down.
Okay,
and,
so we're nothing.
And there's something that Swedenborg said in Heaven and Hell, where he said, if you look at the whole of heaven, it's in the human form, but each heaven is in the human form, and then each society is in the human form, and then couples are in the human form, and each individual, and even your individual thoughts and feelings. And suddenly I thought, it doesn't round down, it rounds up to one. Everybody's a complete universe or something. It really did something to my head. So that's a cool one. How about you?
Well, that's beautiful, man. I never thought about it like that. Well, I've had Swedenborg's books in my water that I'm swimming in the whole time. But I do want to say there was kind of a time when I took like a Swedenborg hiatus. I was probably 17, 18, when I just was feeling like, I don't know what this is. This isn't helping anything. This is making things worse. And as I was out of it for a while, I was doing other stuff intellectually. But then there was this like re-entry period for me. And during that, my good old mom bought me some of your books, the NCE translations, which we didn't know each other back then. But,
yeah, that's right.
But I remember getting Secrets of Heaven Volume 1 and reading like the intro and the notes. And I remember really starting to get hit by that and it talking about falsities. And I just remember, I don't think I had the book with me, but I was on this playground at night. And I remember just realizing, or maybe not playground, like I was close to one or something. And I remember realizing falsities, that's like the stuff I think all the time. The falsities are not these things that are awesome. in opposition to theological things that belong in a church. Like, my brain is fully populated by falsities. So in that moment, I really remember feeling like, this is talking about what I'm experiencing right now. And that was a little watershed.
First time that hits home or changes something in your spirit. That's awesome.
So there we go. Hopefully the ice is broken. Again, get your answers in there, and we'll be checking back in at the end of the program for that. And now that we've got our the mood established, let's establish a body of knowledge here in our Swedenborg Keywords segment. All right, and this always brings, it's keyword is not the hippest thing in the world. Like, you guys want to do some keywords? But this is the hippest thing in the world because you can't do the Swedenborg thing without understanding this terminology.
Yeah, that's right.
Swedenborg will use basic building blocks for his worldview, and he often defines words in different ways than we do.
That's right.
And also you have to understand these concepts to get the composite concepts he builds out of them. You just got to do it. And this week our keywords are the will and the understanding. And that's not always how they're translated, right?
No, that's right. Sometimes for understanding, you'll see intellect, because the Latin word underneath there is intellectus, and intellect is not a bad rendering.
Okay.
And sometimes you'll even see for will, you'll see volition.
Yeah.
A little fancier, more Latinate.
Ooh la la.
And for understanding, you have discernment sometimes.
Okay.
But those are all talking about the same thing. They're faculties in the human mind and spirit. So.
Okay, so anytime you run into any of those phrase pairings, you'll know we're talking about this thing. But what are we talking about? What is this stuff? Let's let Swedenborg talk about it. New Jerusalem 28 is where we're going to start tonight. We have two abilities that make up our life. One called will, and the other, understanding. They are distinguishable, but they are created to be one. When they are one, they are called the mind. So that's something we probably all understand, right? So we're talking about...
That's right. The mind is a common term, isn't it? Yeah.
And,
right.
and relatively useful as well. Wait, we got to go back to that because there was a little extra
There's a little
part of that
tag
quote.
more on that phrase. What was that?
And I can actually just read it right here.
Okay.
So they are the human mind, and it is there that all the life within us is truly to be found. So I wanted to hit that last part because that's pretty important. Not only are they your mind, what's the most important part of you? Your mind, but they're like where we get all of our life.
And it really is, in Swedenborg's map, there's not many things in there. There's your will, your understanding, and your memory is about it. I mean, that's about the whole deal. And your memory is not really... you are sort of an outer court or something like that. Right. Really the main thing that's going on inside us is the will and the understanding.
And according to Swedenborg, the mind is the spirit, right? So these are the two components of the thing that survives. The body goes, but this is like the most important part of you.
This is the eternal and the truly human part of us kind of thing.
Right.
It's beyond the plumbing, so to speak, the physical body and everything. This is the part that lasts and makes us who we are, that everyone has their own will and their own understanding that makes them unique from other people.
Hopefully we've sold you on the concept of the importance of will and understanding. Let's go a little deeper, learn a little more about them. This is New Jerusalem 29, so we made it forward a whole number. Just as everything in the universe that is in accord with the divine design goes back to what is good and what is true, see last week's show where we explained that.
That's right.
So everything in us goes back to will and understanding. This is like that whole sort of Russian nesting doll experience you just talked about.
That's right.
Within us, we have our little good and truth. This is because whatever is good in us resides in our will, and whatever is true in us resides in our understanding.
Like these are homes for, as if there's sort of when stuff gets spiritually shipped to your door, there's a will door and there's an understanding door. And if it's something emotional or it's about love, it goes in the will door. And if it's something of truth, knowledge, wisdom, intelligence, that goes in the understanding door.
Right. It's got to go in the right door. Just today,
that's right.
This is true. This is not a made-up story for comedy. There was a package meant for my neighbor that was shipped to my doorstep. And it can't come into my house,
That's right.
I had to walk it over there.
Wrong door.
Similarly, we've got these little docks in us. This is because whatever is good in us resides in our will, and whatever is true in us resides in our understanding. These two abilities, or these two living parts of ours, receive and are acted upon by what is good and true. Our will receives and is acted upon by everything that is good, and our understanding receives and is acted upon by everything that is true.
I like that, acted upon, too, because it's not only sort of it comes in and that's the vessel it goes into,
yes,
but it actually changes you, like when that goodness or that truth flows in, it changes the state of your will, which we might, refer to as your heart, and the understanding as being your mind. Those are sort of more common expressions.
Sure. Yeah. So thoughty sort of things would be understanding, and feely sort of things would be will.
Yeah, and it's interesting to ponder why Swedenborg says it's so important to tell the difference between these two, and yet sometimes they're sort of separate, and sometimes they can work together.
Okay.
So one of the things that's helped me understand it a little bit is that Latin root, the intellectus, that comes from words that mean choose between. And I think what the intellect is, or the understanding, is I might call the option generator. Uh-huh. Like if you thought about so your will said, let's go on vacation. Yeah. Your intellect would be the part that would say, okay, we could do the Outer Banks, or we could go up the mountains, or we could, whatever. And it starts to list things, right? A staycation, and it'll start to list options.
Like you say, think of a bear. You don't build a bear from scratch in your mind. You just suddenly have a couple of bears you could be focusing on, right?
That's right. And choose between. You could choose between the different bears that pop in your mind. And part of what Swedenborg says is very interesting to me about it. He lived in a time when people were just so high on the idea of the intellect, the understanding, the power of the mind, sort of Sherlock Holmes kind of thing.
Was that Enlightenment era?
The Enlightenment era, yeah. And yet he was saying, oh no, the will is what's really, really in charge. The intellect is only an advisor. So it's like the will is the, sitting on the throne or something. Yes. And the intellect just says, we could do this or we could do that with it. And then the ruler says, we're doing this,
Yeah.
And that's the will part. And so when you understand how those two work together, and sometimes the intellect can say to you, we know eating that is fattening,
Yes.
And the will goes, I love it, and I'm doing it.
Yes. Well, I'm already doing it.
Yes, right.
Yes.
Right. And I shall do it again. And there's not too much the intellect can do, because actually it's not running your life, the will. But when you can get them to work together, so the will starts to listen to the intellect, that's a good situation.
Well, and because in Swedenborg's day, right, and still up to the present, we like to think, we're rational. We're rational
That's
people.
Right. We're rational
I'm making
people.
My decisions based on logic, but Swedenborg asserts there's always actually a desire driving everything.
That's
even
right.
Even your ability to weigh your options is coming from something. Whether it's perhaps you want to, why do I care about weighing these options? Well, maybe I get the gratification of going on vacation, or if I'm weighing options in sort of a legal setting, maybe I want this outcome, or maybe I just want people to know that I can consider things, even if we can barely perceive it. There's always some kind of agenda because otherwise you just wouldn't even give it the time of day.
And when you're studying what people do, isn't it true that people can rationalize almost anything? You know what I mean, right?
Yes.
Like if they really want to do it, no. See, it's not so bad because of, and you can get like that. Will make that intellect say all the reasons why that's not a bad thing to do.
Yeah, I can feel that machine revving up in me when I have all this energy and all these arguments for a position that I'd never thought about before. But because I know there's a reason I want this, you're putting strings of arguments together. You're downplaying certain things. It's just a way the will intellect combo works.
And so part of the strategy apparently is to try to get different information, is really partly what this show is trying to do. Feed different information to the intellect part.
Yeah.
So we can try to have a conversation with the will about, I realize that's how you see things, but this might be a better way, and try to get them to work together in a different way.
Let's try to make this as crystal clear as we can. We got one more quote here from New Jerusalem. This is 32.
All right.
He says, just as goodness is the reality underlying something, and truth is how that thing becomes manifest from goodness, right? That's what we established in our previous episode. So our will is the reality underlying our life, and our understanding is how life becomes manifest from our will.
Oh, that's interesting, the becoming manifest, because your will may want something, but until your intellect joins in, you don't have any way of taking action. Like all real action is a result of both of those working together.
Let's prove it. Let's prove it to the people, and we're going to do so in a series of a play in 2 acts.
How do you propose?
It's called the puzzles.
The puzzles. Okay, looks good. Oh, there's a puzzle.
All right.
Okay.
We'll begin with me solving. You guys know these puzzles, right? You have to try to get these rings off this thing. We're going to begin with me solving this puzzle.
Okay. Yeah, now that's interesting. So you know how to do that, right? Yep. Look at that. That was fast.
There you go.
That's like lightning. Okay, how hard could it be? So, wait a minute.
So the problem that we have here is we both have the will to do this. Like, we both want to take this puzzle apart, right? But I also had the knowledge of how to do it. So I had the intellectual side. Even though Jonathan desperately wants to get the second ring off.
I really do want to
because
get
he
that
doesn't have the intellect side of it, it can't happen. It takes both together to make it work.
And it's not that there's anything wrong with my brain. I just don't have the knowledge.
Take it easy on him, you know?
I've never seen this puzzle before, so.
Whereas I could practice this one before the show.
Aha. Now, so how about this other one?
This is
do you want to do it?
This one,
so Rubik's Cube, you want to do it?
I know how to do these. I've done these before, but I hate Rubik's Cubes. I don't enjoy that, so I'm not going to do it.
Interesting. Okay, so you don't have enjoyment of this, and enjoyment, Swedenborg says, has to do with your will. So your understanding knows how to do it, but you have no particular love for it. You don't enjoy it, so you don't get pleasure out of it, and so you're not likely to do it because you don't have those two things that you need to really, it's another way of not solving the problem. It's just like, I could, but I don't care. I don't want to.
Either one on its own is insufficient to get the most important tasks done. But when they are together, this is the simplest form of what this whole will understanding thing is. And we've set out this idea that it's the will that runs the show, right?
Right.
But there is actually a fundamental role the intellect plays that Swedenborg says it's actually through the intellect that we become spiritually reborn.
That's right.
Because the will is, because it's a monarch, it doesn't listen to anything.
No.
And it just happens to be, for reasons that would take a whole couple shows to give out, it has a tendency towards all kinds of destructive behavior.
That's right. It just tends to be self-centered and a little outrageous. And
the way that things are structured right now, it's through concepts we learn that we can actually train our will. So even though the will is sort of the one calling the shots, it needs the intellect to rescue it.
It does. And that's why I think Swedenborg was so interested in publishing all these books. Let's get some different information in there.
Yeah.
So as your mind is lifted up, he says the understanding can be lifted into the light of heaven. Yeah. So you can actually, it doesn't matter what's in your will. They're separable. And so that understanding part can go all the way up into heaven and see, oh, wow, I need to be a different kind of person, or what, you know what I mean? And I need to work on myself here and try to come back down and work with the will and change your behavior.
Yeah, right. And so that's what we're hoping to arm ourselves with, is the information that can lead to that change. All right. And so in summary, we've got the goodness and truth are these two fundamental forces in the universe, right? Fundamentally, in us, we have the will and the intellect, or the will and the understanding. And these are the receptors, so the understanding can receive that truth and the will can receive that good. But I'm wondering, is the will always receiving good? Because it doesn't seem like people always want to do good things. Can't we want to do bad things?
Right. And can't you go through a long, awkward phase where your mind is thinking, I want to be a better person, but your will keeps wanting something that's not so good.
I'm in one right now. So we're going to actually hear a story about that very dynamic and how the will understanding thing progresses. So let's take a little spiritual road trip. This is the part of the show where we go for a ride with Swedenborg. We're going to investigate what it's like to get up into the light and heat in heaven.
Oh, wow.
Our friend here. Yeah. And
with those very faculties we were just talking about, right?
Those very faculties. Right. How do they test out in whatever environment, like not 0G, but like whatever G heaven is.
Or it might be some other letter or something.
Yeah, we don't know. Some heavenly letter. Now, this story, like all Swedenborg's stories, is not just entertaining, but it's informative.
That's right.
He used them
That's right.
to show, he would teach you these principles and show, this is where I traveled in the afterlife and saw these principles in action. And we have a particular character in this story, and his name is
Redalius.
Redalius. Hey, there he is. I never saw a picture of him before.
Yeah.
Who is Redalius?
Redalius was a professor, and toward the end of his life, last 4 years of his life, he also became a bishop. So Swedenborg will refer to him as Bishop Redalius. And both those professors and bishops at that time in Sweden were very powerful characters. You know, there was only 8 bishops in the whole country, and then 2 archbishops. And so it was a great honor for him to become a bishop. And so he was someone very big in education, and his students really loved him. So he was an intellectual, a serious intellectual who was also a bishop, became a bishop.
And the cool thing with Swedenborg is you get to not just know people's earthly bio, but he meets them after they've died in the spiritual world, and he gets to see how are they doing with it in the new set of conditions.
Yeah, he had died, I think, like 15 years before this story. I think 1738.
Okay.
And so he's been in the spiritual world for 15 years at the time that Swedenborg encounters him and writes about him in his spiritual experiences.
So this is from Swedenborg's Journal of Spiritual Experiences, 4700, and we're going to see here
nice round
how
number.
the will... Yeah, exactly. Well, we just fudged that. It was really 4615.
Okay.
How the will and intellect work when they go up to these lofty heights. There was a certain one who had been intelligent in the world, and in the other life too had insight into such things as pertain to intelligence.
Redalius.
He imagined, like others, that faith alone saved, even at the hour of death, no matter how a person had lived. Consequently, that in the other life heaven could be given to anyone who was such, thus out of mercy alone on account of the Son.
The Son meaning Jesus. So this is a belief that's been around for a while. The kind of, some people call it deathbed repentance, where if you just sort of cry out at that last moment of your life, for forgiveness and mercy
I'm sorry for everything,
that you'll be able to get into heaven, at that last moment. And Swedenborg says it doesn't work that way.
Well, let's see how he fares with that opinion. He believed that heaven could be given in this way out of mercy, and yet he did not know what heaven is.
Oh.
That it is within people in their life's affection.
Life's affection. Okay, there's another word, affection. Affection has to do with the will side.
Yeah.
Has to do with your love. You can tell. I mean, we talk about I have affection for somebody means you love them and that kind of thing, right? And so, but that heaven is not like a place outside of you. It's something internal that has to do with your will.
Yeah, it's not.
Crazy.
He's not even saying like, no, you like Redalius, you couldn't get into heaven. You don't even know what heaven is. You don't even know what you're trying to get into.
This is a super intelligent guy and a church leader in Sweden at the time. That's right.
Shocking. Okay, so it's in their life's affection. On this account, he was brought into heaven toward the front where the entrance to paradise is. And he says toward the front. This is the whole weird spatial thing in heaven where everything is related to the human
and that's
form.
sort of closer to the Lord kind of thing.
Just ignore that. Just ignore that. We don't have time to
he's just at the very entrance. It's not like he's deep in heaven or anything.
Yes.
He's just at the entrance there, right?
Okay. There, surrounded by spirits and prepared in this way, he saw many things, saying every time that they were amazing.
I picture him just saying, "That's amazing. That's amazing."
Yes.
Like he's so astounded that he's only got like one vocabulary
word.
Well,
and Swedenborg backs you up. He says he saw angels there so lovely that he could not be more
amazed.
In a word, he saw the glory of heaven there. So
That's cool.
So that like they're saying, hey, here's everything, and he says this is cooler than I imagined. And then,
that's right. So he's just in astonishment at the glory of, and he's only on the very outer piece of it or something, but he's just astonished by what he's seeing there.
Okay, so now what's going to happen from here?
Yeah.
He just goes in and there it is.
Yeah,
the angels who were there said, now are the angels going to say, you think deathbed repentance is cool? Like, get out of here.
Yeah, shouldn't they straighten him out? Yeah, I mean, that's a thought that he has in his intellect, right? It's a belief that he has.
That's right. And it's wrong, right? So they're going to let him have it here. So the angels who were there said they wanted him to stay with them.
Wait a minute, that's so sweet.
and that he would be given a house there.
Wow.
Which he also accepted.
Okay,
So
sounds good.
They're like, hang out, do
we
whatever you
have a
want.
house for you.
Listen, no
okay,
more,
thank you.
really low APR here. You can buy this house.
That's right.
It's a good location.
He's into it.
But,
there's a but.
But they warned that if he were not yet such as they,
Okay.
he should take care when heaven's light came near and heaven's heat.
Weird that he was at the very entrance there, but he wasn't feeling the light and heat yet, even though he'd been seeing these glorious things. But it's interesting that somehow the heat and the light hadn't really affected him, and they actually give him a warning about that. Like, you would think, oh, wait a minute, the heat of heaven, that's going to be like a warm bath. That's going to be great.
That's right. Yes.
It's going to feel wonderful.
Yeah, how threatening is heaven's light and heaven's heat?
Yeah, I know. How bad could it be?
But they're warning him, and let's see how it all plays out. The light of heaven did come near, and his vision then became dimmer and dimmer.
Wait a minute.
To the
No,
point,
No, and that, you must be reading that wrong, because the light of heaven would be so clear that you could see it. It's like your eyesight got way better.
Right.
You could see all these details. Are
Yes.
you sure?
No, let me try it again. The light of heaven did come near, and his vision then became... No, that's it. His vision then became dimmer and dimmer to the point that he finally could not
He couldn't see.
and together with this, felt somewhat of pain within.
Wow, so he went blind. He went blind when the light of heaven
And it hurt.
shone on him, and it was painful too. That's
So
right.
let's figure out what this doesn't seem like heaven. So let's figure out what's
Weird.
going on here. Then he was restored and saw the angels there gleaming now more than before.
Now, I love that. So the same light of heaven flows into Redalius and
Yeah.
these angels, and Redalius goes blind and goes into a state of pain,
Yes.
and they're like, and it's just shining out like they're more radiant than before.
Yes.
They just felt great to them, and it was painful to him.
So here's where
Wow.
we finally get to this receptacle thing that we were talking about before.
Right.
The intellect is a receptacle for truth, which heaven's light is truth,
It's truth.
and the will is a receptacle for love. So here you have heaven's light come in, and obviously the receptacles are different because the angels get hyped up and pumped up and
they
shinier
start
and brighter.
gleaming. That's right.
But Redalius he can't see.
Basically struck blind and goes into pain. And you wonder whether it's because of, in that context, that he had this belief about salvation at the last, like he doesn't know about salvation or heaven. And so as it comes in, it's like, oh, no. And it just, it's a blinding light kind of thing.
The light shine in the darkness. The darkness didn't comprehend
You
don't have that program written in your mind.
Good scripture quote.
I don't know what that's from.
Yeah.
But you don't have that program in your mind. Then when that light comes out, you can't accept it. It does not read this file type.
Right.
It actually starts to crash your system. So let's
amazing. That's a good way to put it.
let's move to that. So then after
he's still
this,
the story still goes on.
Oh yeah,
That is
there's
great.
more.
Okay.
After this, hopefully everyone at home is feeling the same way.
Yeah.
Like if we lost everyone. After this, the heat of heaven came near.
Oh, here comes the heat. So we had the light before. Here comes the and they warned him, and the light wasn't good. How's the heat going to go?
Maybe the heat's
What do
okay.
you think? Maybe the heat's going to be good. Maybe it'll feel good.
And then he began to feel intense pain.
Uh-oh.
And the pain penetrated to his inner regions. So at the end, he felt tormented.
Wow. So that heat of heaven came, and it was like, ow, like
Yeah.
really, really deep within himself.
And so I would think this is
torment.
the receptacle of the will.
Yeah.
And that if the will is not reformed, love is actually painful to it.
Right.
He then became like a heavy weight and at length dropped.
I'm afraid I find that slightly amusing. I mean, I feel for the poor guy, but it's just like you turn into dead weight kind of thing, and he just falls down. It's so overwhelming. I do feel compassion for him.
No, but so listen, I'm sure he's okay with us using him as an example.
All right.
And it's worth noting that in the spiritual world, your position is relative to your will and understanding.
That's right. And so, he becomes sort of leaden and he falls down. And I remembering Swedenborg says that evil is heavy and falls of its own accord into
That's right.
Downward kind of thing.
That's right.
It falls to it. Now, but it's not that there's no hope for this guy.
Sure.
Go on.
Then he asked where he could be revived. And eventually he was revived.
Yeah, and so I picture him just like he's slumping down.
Yeah.
A little help here.
Yes. And so, exactly.
where is there somewhere that I, be brought back to life? I mean, the poor guy, right?
Get a pick me up, right? He then asked whether he was then asked whether he wanted to be in heaven.
Oh, interesting question. So, here comes the light of heaven. Ow, go blind, painful. Here comes the heat.
Yes.
And he gets so heavy. It's incredibly intense inner pain. And then they ask him, do you want to be, because he had always wanted to be in heaven.
That's right.
And then they say, do you want to be in heaven? What's his response?
He said he by no means sought it. And so it shows
I'm not eager to go.
You got to know what heaven is, that heaven is a state of love and truth, and that unless we are prepared for it, it doesn't work. Now, as you said, this particular guy, Redelius, we see him later in the spiritual diary.
That's right.
And he's doing very well.
He's doing great.
Yeah.
In fact, a very interesting little story that comes up a little later is that Swedenborg sees this thoroughbred horse, beautiful horse, just tearing along.
Yeah.
And he realizes this is just a correspondence. And what it is this Redelius. And a thoroughbred horse has a very good meaning. It has to do with the understanding of Scripture and truth and things like that. And the thoroughbred, all that, like that's a very good image. And what Redelius was thinking about was the very topic of this show, the will and the understanding. And the fact that this horse is just booking, meant that I think that his thoughts about the will and the understanding were getting really good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So he really, that whole experience. So that's why it's not needless suffering.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, back to the drawing board. I thought I knew what heaven was.
Yeah.
But I'm not even sure I want to go there. And then he learns, oh no, you got to get your will in the right shape and your understanding in the right shape. Then you can go.
And hopefully we're giving all of ourselves and you at home these racing spiritual horses of the mind.
That's right.
By getting these concepts and just showing that what we're doing when we're trying to reform the will and understanding is making it so that when that light and heat come at us, we feel it like the angels do. And
that
then we can be there.
That heat may actually be joy.
Yeah.
But I can't, it's making me hurt,
Yeah, well, you think about if you've been out in the cold and you're not maybe not frostbitten, but you're close, and you just touch cold water, it feels hot. And then when it's hot water, it's unbearable.
It's unbearable.
Heaven is so full of selfless love that in our current state, we're not native to that, but we can get there. And that's the point of regeneration and of spiritual growth. We actually have a bunch of shows about how to get there.
That's right.
We have a show called Repentance, How to Be in Heaven Now, Regeneration, How Radical Love is Born, the day-to-day process of our salvation. Swedenborg, if I had to summarize Swedenborg, this is how you change your will and understanding, right? This is how you get ready.
Yeah, you're not stuck with it. Even after he dies, Redelius is not stuck with it. He had a concept that was inaccurate.
Yes.
But heaven wants to pull him up, and it seems like he was responding to this treatment.
Absolutely. So may we all respond well as well. All right. So that's a bunch of stuff that we just gave you, and it's a little confusing. It's a little counterintuitive. Does that call up any questions? We're about to start our live Q&A now. So get your questions into the chat room now, and we'll answer them. So we're looking for you, if you're watching from home, to enter questions into the chat on YouTube, and we'll answer them, or we'll try to answer them right now. We're going to begin with a question we'd already gotten previously, just to get time on your keyboards, and then if you guys got them, we'll answer them right now. So let's begin with our first question. Oh, hey, maybe this is
that might be a new one.
Is this a brand new one? Maybe so. Yeah, okay. So never mind. This is brand new. Does Swedenborg ever reference alternate dimensions? Could the levels of heaven and hell be what many today refer to as such dimensions? Is it all semantics? Would it fit?
That's interesting, because I know people talk about more than the 3 or 4 dimensions of space-time and all that there's 11 dimensions and they're all curled up or something like that. They're tiny. But when I've read those kind of things in physics books, they seem to me that they're still talking about something in the physical realm, maybe. I mean, it's confusing. But Swedenborg really has a completely discretely separate existence of these layers of heaven.
Yeah.
But talk about other dimensions. I mean, they're full. If there's 11 here, there's 11 there, for sure, or more. Yeah, many different kinds, don't you think?
Yeah, I think we've got sort of semantics. I think I just said that, but because there's sort of two ways people use the term dimension. One is the one you're talking about, where there's somehow this is 3 dimensions, but there are 11 other dimensions curled up on a molecular or subatomic level or something. But then it's like, I met somebody from another dimension. He popped in here to say,
yes.
Dimension is like another place, not another direction. So, as far as the curled up things in here, who knows if there's an interface with spiritual world? We don't know exactly how that connects. But it's if like someone's saying like you can go to another dimension. When I left my body, I was in another dimension. That could share a lot of similarities with Swedenborg's description, right?
Yeah,
So
and I think he doesn't use that term as I remember.
No, he wasn't around.
Not much. No, that wasn't so much.
And the translators never.
But he talks about levels and things like that. Like there's different levels, and some of them are continuous levels that go this way. But then there are discretely separate levels.
Yes.
That. And there's many of these in some ways that he describes. He says there's 2 levels above the highest heaven before you get to God and stuff like this.
Well, and I feel like characterizes dimensions is that they're not. Like, you got to go really far that way, then you'll hit this dimension. It's that they're somehow occupying the same space at the same time, but they're separate.
Right.
And Swedenborg does say the spiritual world is right where we are, not distance in us from the least.
Not in the least.
From us in the least.
That's right. There's that beautiful passage in Divine Love and Wisdom that talks about people think it's some distant bird or something, but he says it's like a bird of paradise, so close it almost brushes your pupil of your eye with its feathers, willing to be seen. It's so close.
But how could it be so close, but yet we don't see it? It's in another dimension.
Oh,
okay,
there
let's
you
take
go.
our next question here. Thanks
I think
so
we
much,
got
Amber
to the end
Marie.
of that one there.
All right, this is Falcon Britt. Does Swedenborg advocate selling everything and giving it to the poor as Jesus advised one man? Do we need to liquidate all of our assets and give them up? Are they weighing us down? Is that the greatest moral good to do that?
Swedenborg really has quite an interestingly different take on that.
And not that he's contradicting Jesus, but he's saying this is the meaning of the words.
No, but the way that he interprets it, that's right. Yeah. He takes the selling and the buying as being having to do with truth, and that poverty is not having truth. I was a little humiliated, but I have no idea. I'm impoverished when it comes to this puzzle. I don't know how to do. You are wealthier in knowledge than I am.
It was a setup. All right, this thing was already loose.
Tell them.
Okay, this man is just as good at puzzles as I am. I don't know how to do. Stuart's the one who actually knows how to do that puzzle. All right, continue.
So, the selling all that you have and giving to the poor. What he's talking about in a spiritual way is to. Any information, it's in a way what we're trying to do with this show, which is that if you have information, give it to people who don't have as much information.
Okay.
Put that out into the market and give it to people who don't have it. Swedenborg says that in terms of just physical wealth and those kind of things, if you give everything away, then you're in need of everything, and you're not in as good a position to love your neighbor because you need so much stuff.
Yeah.
So he says it's not bad to provide for yourself and your own, not only for the time being, but into the future. It's not even bad to be in business and make a profit or whatever. Swedenborg has no problem with all of that. There are different ways to do it. There's sort of greedy, self-centered ways to do it, and ways that are really trying to give people more than you get in return, or whatever, just good business practices. But he doesn't endorse the idea of that kind of poverty. And he says that some people who practice that go to the other world, and they're not that much fun to be around because they feel like, well, I deserve heaven. I gave up everything for this, And so it's a little tricky. That's just one example. There are a lot of different ways to hold it. But he takes an unusual tack on that, and yet he still says that's a good teaching. But you need to understand the depth behind it of what the poverty is there and what's selling. What is that everything that you're supposed to sell?
I mean, you want to have the spirit of that like I would give everything
Right.
to help people. But as far as actually giving away all your possessions, it's not about doing that in principle. It's about how do you do the most good. Because, right, if you are trying to get an important job done, but you don't have the resources to be in the right state of health that you can do it, you're not helping. And sometimes people with a lot of wealth can be more effective at helping because they know how to distribute.
That's right.
It's not to say that there isn't a pressing need to make sure that people have the basic necessities and that everybody can live a good life, but it's about what's the best way to get there. At times,
Right.
that is giving stuff away. And that for some people, that could be the right path. Sell everything you have, live as simply as you possibly can. For I think it would be case by case, but there's not a universal rule that you got to get rid of everything that's yours.
Yeah, and Swedenborg talks about wisely loving, like trying to figure out what's the most effective way to love someone else. Give them something that really builds their life and heads things in a good direction.
Yeah.
Not just necessarily sort of doing it without thought or something like that.
That's a discussion. We should do a couple of shows on that. I don't know if we have, but it's definitely worth it. Okay, let's look at the next one. Thanks, Falcon Britt. Bonnie Gates, could we have a memory of what has happened to others as if it were our own?
This is a great question, and Swedenborg has a very interesting answer to it in a way, because he says that spirits are with us, and when they're with us, they are partaking in our memories as if they were their own. But he says spirits' memories don't leak into ours. He says
doesn't
happen. Next sentence. When it does, it causes a phenomenon known as déjà vu.
Yeah.
He doesn't use the expression déjà vu, but he uses Latin words along those lines. So he says it doesn't happen, and then when it does,
yes.
And so that to me says basically no, but yes.
It can happen.
You could have a memory of what had happened to others as if it were your own. It's sort of a leak. It's not, it's not set up that way. It's supposed to go the other way. But I think it does. I've had amazing sort of deja vu experiences where I can't believe I didn't, because I feel totally as if I experienced this. I know what's going to happen next,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting one.
Yeah, it seems like everything is more communal than you would think in the spiritual world. Like you have
that's right.
Thoughts and
Good
feelings
point.
can be shared as well as memories and experiences. So here we feel like we're in these little
bubble or something.
Right? Impenetrable membrane around us. But actually, even things that you think are just in your own memory bank, other people can get them at times, and there's just more. It's more permeable up there.
More permeable. That's absolutely
Let's
right.
do real quick one more question before we roll the end of this segment. So, if we have one, great. John May asks, how do we know our will is good without deceiving ourselves?
That's a great question. Yeah, because the ability to deceive yourself, especially if your will is saying, intellect, I want to report on my own state, but make it good, right? Make me out to look good.
That's right.
So we can certainly deceive ourselves. It's really kind of horrifying when you see how you can fool yourself. Part of that's why I think the angels say, watch out for that light of heaven, because if you really have a different idea of yourself than the light of heaven shows you to be, it can be painful and kind of awful to have that experience. But Swedenborg does give certain indications. Isn't there that passage in New Jerusalem that says something like, if you're one of two people who's vying for a job and you actually know that the other candidate would do a better job and do more good than you would, you stand back and let that other person take the job?
Oh.
Then your will is good.
Okay.
And he has certain sort of diagnostics that you can kind of
John,
run to see.
You can be the host of this show. Yes,
I would not do a better job.
But that's a great point. That you can have little indications of it that you can sort of test by. But I like, and something that you can add to that is your will is never good. I mean, it's only God.
There's some
good.
aspect to it that remains no good. Another thing that Swedenborg says quite a few times is go ask like the wisest person you know. Because sometimes someone else who's wise can see more clearly. We sort of cover our own faults, but someone else can see more clearly and say, no, I think you're on the right track. Because sometimes you go the other way where you're convinced you're just horrible.
Yeah.
And actually, you're a better person than you're giving yourself credit for,
Right.
you know, because it can kind of go both ways.
Yeah. If you keep that question with you, John May, how do we know our will is good? If we keep asking that of ourselves, you're never going to catch yourself over time. But if you keep that question in your mind, you're going to be on the right path. You know, that's the thing you got to have. As long as you're looking to, hey, if I'm not acting good here, then I don't want to. Then I want something else to supersede me. Then we're in the right way. So that's you're already in the right place.
That's
asking
right.
That right.
And
there.
I really think the whole practice of self-examination, repentance, all that is looking at those kind of things, and exploring those questions, and
very good.
And seeking some forward motion on that. Great question. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Glad we took it. Now, Dr. Jonathan Rose, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hey, fun to be with you.
Because we're going to go to our guest story, and when we come back, Chelsea's going to share some stuff she found.
Oh, that's great.
Thanks, everybody, for giving Jonathan such a good time here. And we're going to go to our guest story segment. This is a fan of the show who we got to sit down and have a conversation with. This is Pete, who was originally a Brit from outside Liverpool, but now he lives in New Jersey. And we got to have a nice little chat with him, which we'll play for you now.
So wondering, Pete, now if I could turn it over to you, and I just would love to know. So you're wondering about Swedenborg. How did you first find out about Swedenborg, and how did you come to find our show?
Okay, well, it was actually through Facebook. Weirdly, so we can thank Mark Zuckerberg for that one.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a spiritual seeker, and Facebook likes to tailor a lot of the things it gives you to what it believes you're interested in. And I first came across a quote from Heaven and Hell on my Facebook page, my newsfeed or whatever you call it. And I read that and I thought, oh, that's Emanuel Swedenborg. I had heard of him, right? But I hadn't read anything of his work. And so I kind of liked it and shared it. And a lot of my friends put likes and thanked me for sending it. And then another couple came in, and I'm, sharing those, and everybody seemed to like it. And then I thought, okay, right, Emanuel Swedenborg. So I went to YouTube and I typed his name in the search field, and you guys showed up. And I went, oh, wow, there's a channel, right? Off the Left Eye. All right, okay. So I can't remember what the first video was. This was about a year ago.
Yep.
And I just watched the video, and I watched the next one. And it's a bit like Game of Thrones, you don't want to go, I'll just watch another.
That's right.
4 a.m., you're still watching them.
Yeah.
And I kind of just, I just loved every show that you presented. And especially the spiritual questions answered. I love those.
Yeah.
Because you've got the whole team there, and I love the sort of chemistry between the four of you, and how you break down these questions and how you give all of your your different responses. And I just felt this is where I want to learn. This is what the next stage I want to be at. I want to learn as much as I possibly can. I downloaded Heaven and Hell and a couple of the other books, and I was reading them online. So that's how I got involved. It was about a year ago.
Yeah. So you got involved, and if it's a year ago and here you are still involved, so what's keeping you there? So you enjoy the show, but are there any particular concepts that you found profound or that had an impact on you?
Yeah, the whole idea of, several really. This whole idea of divine order, right? It's just this thought that, regardless of how chaotic things may seem, and they do have, chaotic situations do have a profound impact on people's lives. There's no doubt about it. But the idea that behind all of that there is this divine order, that the Lord is there, the divine love and wisdom is omnipresent and ever present, and everyone on earth is being taken care of, right? Regardless of what happens to them physically, or what happens to them emotionally, and how chaotic and how terribly tragic it may appear to be, there is this divine order behind everything, and that everybody is being looked after and taken care of and protected. That was one concept that really kind of, it resonated with me quite deeply. And I follow that as much as I possibly can, and there's also the idea of the usefulness. Okay. Useful works. and doing the good works, and as a path towards spiritual progression. Just the way that Swedenborg lays these ideas out, right? He puts them in terms that are easy to understand and easy to comprehend, and on a daily basis to try and, work with that and fulfill it as much as I possibly can, And, I fail, but, I try. And the idea that just trying is enough very often.
Yes. No, that's very well said. I mean, those are some awesome concepts, but I really like the way you summarize them and put them together. And it's cool to think about you're applying them and they're making a difference in life. Yeah,
they certainly are. I like that. And I like the whole idea also of, that this life, as you've often said, is just the womb for the next one.
Right.
That we're kind of like developing here in the amniotic fluid of the planet, and we'll eventually be born into that next life. And that progression is eternal, right? So don't sweat it, because, we got a long time to work on this. And, we can progress at our own speed and our own pace. And we choose. We choose where we go and why we go there.
Yeah.
And I think that's given my upbringing, in the Catholic faith, which basically gave us very little choice once we died. You couldn't make up for anything. You're either going to the bad place or the good place.
Yeah.
And you went there forever, and that's it. And I kind of wasn't quite happy with that one. So this idea that we actually choose where we want to be, I like, and it resonates.
I'm glad. Well, that's awesome. That's so cool to hear about. And it's cool that it could do all these different things, resolve some or upgrade ideas from the past, give you something to work on, and then provide this sort of like beyond intellectual, but this greater magnitude of comfort about how the world is run, so that's great. Well, I really appreciate getting to hear that from you, Pete. And I just want to say thanks for taking the time to chat with us today.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Thanks for asking me on. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. And listen, Happy New Year to all of you. Looking forward to a lot more great work next year. And thanks again, and keep it coming.
I always get so pumped up for the 6th segment with that new jam. Everybody, there's a lot going on behind the scenes as this show goes, and we have Chelsea here with us, staff writer for Swedenborgian Life. She has been furiously compiling all your answers to this ice melt question, and I just want to hear. Okay, so the question was, for those of you who don't remember it, what was the first? Is it going to appear here? Maybe not. What was the first Swedenborg book that you read?
That's right. What's the first book of Swedenborg's that you had exposure to?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And so I just realized that I'm really curious to know, like, what did people say? And so you have some compilation of that?
We even have a nice pie chart that we created in time to show you. So I'll walk you through this. So sort of not surprisingly, Heaven and Hell is the number one that nearly half of the people who responded had exposure to Heaven and Hell first, and that also is Swedenborg's just most popular work. Yep. A little tidbit about that, there was I think Robert Bush, who's in the chat, he said, I think that he read Heaven and Hell in 1958, and that happens to be 200 years exactly after the publication of Heaven and Hell in 1758. Yeah. So
it's like a fine wine.
And then almost half as many people first had exposure to Divine Providence. I'm not counted in that number, but that was the first book that I've been a raised Swedenborgian, but I first read Divine Providence of my own volition, of my own will and understanding.
Oh, nice way to tie in our theme.
When I was in my early 20s. So then third is actually our show. There were several people who didn't have a specific book, but just said our show was the first exposure they had.
Cool.
So that's pretty good. We're in the running. Next is
we just got to
Married.
think of a Latin title for our show now. It can fit right into Swedenborg's catalog.
Oh, and I forgot to say, Border Ruffian specifically said it was one of our episodes about light. So that might have been spiritual light, or what light and heat can tell you about God.
Yes.
One of those.
That's cool to think about, because we just got all these episodes tucked back in YouTube there, and it thinks that was somebody's
way to get into these ideas. And then Married Love is there. And then the other counts for 4 different books.
Okay.
Spiritual Diary, which is a unusual one to have first exposure to.
Why would you stick around? Just kidding. That's my favorite book, I think.
Yeah, I know. It's come to be talk about a fine wine.
Yeah, that's right.
There's the other one, a Swedenborg Foundation published work, The Lives of Angels, which I think is one of those compilations of Swedenborg's teachings about angels.
Swedenborg.com to pick it up.
Divine Love and Wisdom is in there. And then Arcana Celestia. And the person who said that, Jim Giddings, said that that was his first exposure, but that the translation was a little bit confusing.
Yes.
But then reading the novel, The Discovered Country, made him love it and want to pursue it. Swedenborg's ideas. And I was like, what's this? The Discovered Country.
I was just thinking the same thing.
So I did a little research.
While the show was happening?
Yep. I did as much as Google could tell me.
It's amazing.
And The Discovered Country is a book that was published in 1892. Here's a cover image of it.
Wow, we already got a cover image? This is
Carlisle
awesome.
Peter Celia,
yeah.
he has a profile on the New England Conservatory website because he was a concert pianist and actually eventually opened his own school of music. But this is during the time of spiritualism and stuff, so he actually was later in life an author on spiritualist subjects. And supposedly this book is very Swedenborgian. I mean, you see the wisdom and love up
they copied our last
top,
show.
And this written thing of his own that says, in the ages to come, love, wisdom, and goodness, which is heaven, will prevail, while hate, barbarianism, and cruelty, which is hell, shall pass away. So that's a very Swedenborgian rendition of the famous quote from Revelation about, the first heaven and the first earth will pass away. But so that I thought was a lot of cool information to get from our audience about the books and even more.
We're getting like a free education here.
Yes.
But this is why we put the questions out to you all, because we want to connect with you on shared experiences, and we want to learn. We want to expand our knowledge of what the Swedenborg thing is and where it ties in and everything like that. Thanks so much, Chelsea. Thanks so much, everyone, for tying that in. And thanks to everybody for sticking around for an entire show. We made it to the end. You did it. This is our show for this week, and we're going to be hoping that you help us promote this show on YouTube just by simply liking and subscribing, because that gets it out into the universe. I gotta go home on all my 10,000 fake accounts and like and subscribe to this thing. And then if you want to help make this show happen, check us out at Patreon. Do you want to describe what Patreon is?
Well, Patreon is a patron thing where anytime we post a show, you give a little donation that helps us make it happen.
Just $1.
And then in exchange for that, you get extra behind the scenes footage. Coming up, I think there's a video about, if it's not already up, about sort of reflections on this previous year and looking ahead to 2018.
That's right. Yeah, retrospective.
So, like we say, the best stuff is free. That means we always put our best work on the YouTube channel, but you get these special extras and insights into the creation of every show, which is fun. It's
just a little thank you from us to you.
Yes.
Thanks for doing that. We didn't rehearse that you would do that, but I just felt like someone else has got to tell them about Patreon. Okay, so that's it. This is our show for this week. We're going to be back same time, 8 p.m. Eastern. Next week, we're going to be talking about the inner and outer self.
Yes.
Which is going to be another amazing journey. We're slowly giving ourselves all the basic dualistic tools we need to navigate life. We'll also be taking another spiritual road trip, as we always do, hopefully sharing some more laughs and some insights and fun. Thanks, Chelsea.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Yep, thanks. Swedenborgian Life is Amy Aquarola, Morgan Beard, Curtis Childs, Karen Childs, Matthew Childs, Alexa Cole, John Connolly, Cara Dom, Chris Dunn, Stuart Farmer, Ben Keys, Reed McCardle, Chelsea Odner, Jonathan Rose, Shiloh Silverman, and Shada Sullivan.